Hello, everyone, and welcome to 60 Nightmares. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to guide you into the shadows. I know many of you drift off to sleep while listening, so before we begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now? Now settle in. Let the world outside fade away, because the nightmares are waiting, and it all begins right here.
When I was a kid, everyone I know played a horrible prank on me. This is something I should probably be speaking about with a therapist, I know. I would, or I have been, but that's not really an option anymore. In fact, I couldn't tell you how many times I've told this story to various medical professionals. I'm 30 now, 20 years since it happened. I just wanted to stop. I was a pretty average kid, I think. A little weird, but every kid is a little weird. I had an older sister, and we fought like two cats. I had a couple good friends, most of whom lived on my street or one street over, and we would meet after school and play until it was time for dinner. My life was fairly ideal. I played soccer, I think. Honestly, I have a lot of trouble remembering much of my childhood, but I remember that I got a Nintendo DS for my 10th birthday, and we had a big party in the backyard. Practically the whole neighborhood showed up. My birthday was just before school got out for the summer, so the air buzzed with excitement, and the evening was warm and felt more alive than other nights. The grown-ups started a fire in our little fire pit, and they sat around it and drank beer while we ran around. I was allowed to stay up past when I usually went to bed, and the other kids chased fireflies with me and roasted marshmallows until late. I remember going to bed happy, excited for summer, and exhausted. I fell asleep quickly, the peel and stick glow in the dark stars and moons shining on the ceiling above my head. Waking up the day after my birthday, something felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it. I hadn't had a nightmare, it wasn't that. I had slept better than I could really remember ever sleeping. It was late, I realized. That must be it. My mom usually woke me up around 8 if it wasn't a school day. She said it was a good habit to be in the routine of waking up early and starting your day on the right foot. By the light streaming in from my windows and the slightly muggy heat in the room, I figured it was already 10 a.m. or so. I smiled, sliding out of bed. It must have been one final birthday treat, letting me sleep in. She had let me sleep in the day before too, of course, although on my birthday itself I had wanted to get up as early as possible. Mom. I called into the hallway, poking my head out the door. No answer. I frowned. It was Saturday, so my dad was definitely already at work, but my mom wouldn't be. My sister wouldn't be home either. She had left the night before to spend the night at her friend's house. She was 13 now, and allowed to have sleepovers, for which I was eternally jealous. I decided she must be out front in the garden. I put on a shirt and left my room. I smelled coffee, but there was none left in the pot. There were dishes in the sink, too, with remnants of eggs stuck to a pan. It wasn't necessarily alarming, but it was strange. Even on days I slept in, there was always breakfast left over for me. I opened the front door, opening my mouth to call out to my mom, but I instantly froze. Halfway up our walkway was the mailman. He was on the ground, sprawled out awkwardly on the cement. Fresh blood pooled beneath him in a gruesome splatter. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't move. His limbs were bent at horrible angles, his face pointed away from me. It almost looked like something, some omnipotent force, had lifted him into the air and then slammed him back down. The package he must have been delivering lay a few feet away, the cardboard dented and soaked in red. I didn't need any confirmation he was dead. It wasn't a question. I had never seen a dead person before. Sometimes my parents had watched horror movies, but that hardly counted. I backed into the house and closed the door behind me. My mind was racing too fast, and my heart felt like it might burst out of my chest. Everything in my body was reeling, so much so that all I could do was move slowly, in a faux sense of calm. "Mom!" I called out again, into the silent house, my voice breaking. "Mom, are you home? Something happened outside. Mom!" No one answered. The house felt way too quiet. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. I had to brace myself against the wall as I made my way to my parents' room, because I was almost shaking too hard to hold myself up. "Mom!" I pushed open her bedroom door. It creaked, the sound almost deafening against the silence that blanketed the room. Our old gray cat, Gumbo, weaseled her way through the crack and slipped out into the hallway, brushing against my leg on her way. I saw a lump in the bed. For a moment I thought it was just pillows, but then I realized it couldn't have been. The bed was made, and all the pillows were accounted for, leaning against the headboard. "Mom, are you asleep?" It came out as a whisper, even though it wasn't like I had been trying not to wake her up. I wanted her awake, badly. I think I just somehow already knew. Something was hanging in the air, this heaviness, like the whole world had been blanketed in a thing that was empty and hot and dead. A desert popped into my head, a place that was so far away from everything and completely devoid of anything. Devoid of life. When I pulled back the covers, the shock washed over me like an electric zap. Every one of my veins and bones and muscles felt 20 degrees hotter than they should have been. There was blood everywhere. I could barely see any section of the sheets that wasn't soaked in it. It looked like the cherry juice we sometimes made from the tree in our backyard, squashing the berries with our hands and laughing as the sticky syrup trickled down our wrists. Her eyes were open. Her mouth was open too, wide open, like she was about to scream. I gagged, stumbling backwards and almost falling down. My legs felt like they wouldn't work anymore. I was in a daze as I stumbled back to the kitchen. The eggs on the pan seemed like they were mocking me now. I knew my parents had told me what to do in an emergency, but all of that was gone from me now. This didn't feel like an emergency. It felt more like a horrible nightmare. I pinched myself on the arm, just in case. The neighbors, that was it. I was supposed to call my neighbors. The number was on a sticky note next to the phone. My fingers shook as I dialed the number. They picked up after 3 rings that felt like they took 1 year each. I heard a sort of crackling sound, like someone was moving the phone around. "Hello. Hi." I cleared my throat, trying to get rid of the lump firmly lodged at the back of my tongue. "This is Jackson from next door." I heard some sort of giggle, a choked one, like they were trying to hold it back, and then some hushed whispering. "Hi, Jackson," the voice said. I assumed it was the mother, Mrs. Winston. "Is everything all right? Can I help you with something?" Something happened, my mom." "Oh, honey," Mrs. Winston said, her tone gentle, but something about it felt deeply off. My stomach twisted. "Why don't you head on over here, HM? We'll figure out what's going on together." "Okay." I remember hanging up before she said anything else. Something about her voice was unnerving me. Still, I didn't know where else to go. I slipped out the back door so I wouldn't have to walk past the mailman, Gumbo, watching me go. I knocked on the neighbor's door. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. I stepped into the flower beds, peering in through the windows. Someone was lying on the couch, their head tilted back like they were staring up at the ceiling. For a moment that was what I thought was happening, until I saw that their chest was opened up like a patient on a surgery table. All guts and organs and blood. So much blood. It was Mr. Winston, in his sweater vest and brown dad shorts. Dead like the mailman. Dead like my mom. Something came over me, and I burst through their front door. It was unlocked, which I hadn't really expected, so I went tumbling into the room, landing on my stomach, my face slamming into the floor, face to face with Mrs. Wilson, who lay dead in front of the phone. Her eyes were open too. There was a fly on one of them, crawling across the white, pausing every few seconds to rub its hands together. I had started to cry. It was finally hitting me that this was real, not some dream, and I desperately wanted my mom. I scrambled to my feet, nearly throwing up when I realized my face was covered in her blood. I swiped at it with my hands, trying to wipe it away as quickly as possible. Then, instinctively, I licked my lips. Horrified, I braced myself for the coppery taste of the blood on my tongue. But it never came. It was sweet. I hesitated, trembling incessantly, before cautiously raising one of my red fingers to my lips. Sweet. Memories flooded my mind, memories of baking with my grandmother, the sweet syrup we would sometimes pour into the mixing bowls. It was fucking corn syrup. I ran to my father's work, which was on the other side of town. By the time I got there, I was close to passing out and drenched in sweat, but it had made it a little easier to get here with the road completely devoid of cars. There were some, parked on the side of the road or every now and then in the middle of it, but none of them had people in them. Some of them had blood, thick and red and gooey blood. The nice receptionist that was always at the front desk and always gave me candy when my dad brought me in, had her head against the computer. Her hair was matted with red liquid, as if someone had ripped out entire chunks of her scalp. Before I could think too hard about it, I wiped my finger across the side of her head and licked it. It was sweet too. I felt like my brain was going to break, like I was standing on the edge of something completely incomprehensible. I shook the woman. She flopped like a rag doll. I sobbed, shoving her, and she slumped to the ground, her head knocking against the tiles. Wake up! I screamed at her. I know you're not dead. She didn't move an inch, just stared, unblinking, her mouth hanging half open. I ran into the room my dad usually worked in, scanning it for his workspace. I couldn't remember where it was, just that it was around halfway back and close to the wall. In every cubicle someone was dead. Sometimes they looked halfway peaceful, as if they'd been caught by surprise, but most of them were eviscerated in one way or another. Entrails hanging out, bones showing, blood sprayed against the walls, even some with faces ripped clean off. It was like something unseeable had swept through the town on a rampage. But all of their blood was made of corn syrup. In a brave moment, I even touched one of the organs, something that looked like a strange deflated balloon, and it jiggled, but more like plastic than a human body part. At one point, I swore I heard a giggle behind me. I whipped around, but no one was there. I found my dad at the water cooler, sitting against the wall, cone paper cup still gripped loosely in his hand. He stared straight ahead, blood leaking from his eyes, nose, and mouth, like he'd exploded from the inside. "Dad," I whispered, grabbing his shoulder. "This isn't funny. Please stop." There was a strange look on his face that I could just barely make out through the red. Almost like a smile. Like a smile someone would only make if they were trying very hard not to. I walked back home down the middle of the road, balancing on the yellow lines to have something to focus on, because I was fairly certain if I stopped walking, I wouldn't start again. When I got there, I climbed into bed and I closed my eyes. I didn't know what else to do. Eventually, after what must have been hours and hours of lying there, I drifted off into a restless sleep. I woke up to someone shaking my shoulder. I screamed, scrambling away from them, immediately wide awake and terrified. Whoa! My mom backed away, smiling. Sorry, buddy, I didn't mean to scare you. I was breathing hard. I looked her over, clutching my chest. She was completely fine. She looked it, at least. She stood there in a white blouse and blue jeans, her hair tied up like always, her eyes bright and happy. What day is it? Her smile faded, and she frowned a little. It was then that I noticed the smell of bacon wafting in from the kitchen. It's Sunday, Bun, remember? 2 days after my birthday. So yesterday had been real. What happened yesterday? She placed the back of her hand on my forehead, tooting softly. Did one of those neighborhood kids you play with get you sick, honey? Do you feel okay? I dropped it, because I didn't know what to say. I convinced myself maybe I really was sick, maybe it had been some kind of feverish hallucination. And I was so relieved to see her, I didn't want to think about any of it anymore. I went to eat breakfast, sitting at the table between my dad and my sister, and everything was normal. But when I left the house later that day, I saw it. On the walkway leading up to our house, there was something pink on the pavement, a faint pink stain, like something sweet and red and sticky had been recently scrubbed away. Like I said, it's been 30 years. I've been feeling like I had almost recovered from that incident. I had asked everyone I knew countless times about that day, but none of them seemed to have any idea what I was talking about. But still, I had almost let it go, and it had never happened again. Not until today. Today, when I walked into my therapist's office, it seemed strangely quiet. There was usually music playing, something soothing and soft, and there were people in the waiting room and at the front desk typing on a keyboard. But today, nothing. No one. Silence. I let myself into Dr. Sheldon's office, perplexed. Which is when I found her dead on the carpet, her blood sprayed across all the walls, even dripping from the ceiling. It was crazy, I know that, but I immediately tasted it. Sweet. I rolled her over, and her eyes were open, a strange smile on her face. This time I did something I didn't think to do as a kid. I checked her pulse. She's alive. I don't know what to do. I can't believe they're doing this to me again. Do they think this is funny? Story number 2. My girlfriend and I get tortured for a living. Something went seriously wrong during her last session, and now she's different. I've always had a bit of a passion for odd jobs. When I was a teenager, I discovered Craigslist, and everything just kind of snowballed from there. You wouldn't believe the kinds of things you can find on the internet, the kind of jobs you can secure without having to do any paperwork. Most of the time, the people hiring either don't want to be traceable by the government, or they're just far too desperate at that point to add any additional hoops to jump through. That was how I met Chelsea. It was actually a really funny story, perfect for telling at parties. It would be perfect for our wedding, too, and for telling our kids. It would have been, at least. We met because we had both been hired to come to this birthday party, a kid turning 11. Neither of us fully knew what the job entailed when we agreed, which might have been a sign that we shouldn't have, but we were both informed we'd be paid handsomely, and that was all that either of us needed to hear. When we got there, Frank, a middle-aged guy with a salt and pepper beard who smelled strongly of patchouli and marinara sauce, informed us we were to get in a huge screaming match around the middle of the party. We were playing a couple from a few houses down who were really on the fritz, I guess. We weren't told why, just what to do. I'm still not sure why he wanted us to do that. I was hesitant. I wasn't much of an actor. But Chelsea, she threw herself into the role wholeheartedly. A couple of hours later, we were sitting on the curb a block away, and she was holding a bag of frozen carrots against my swollen cheekbone, and I was nursing a blunt, wincing at how my chocolate milk-soaked clothing stuck to my skin. We compared stories of our strangest jobs, our craziest experiences, the worst things we'd ever done to make a couple bucks. We both agreed that anything below a felony was fair game, but we gravitated towards weird yet legal and harmless tasks. She had a passion for all of it that I'd never seen in anyone I'd ever met. She was really doing it for the experiences, not the money. She was a thrill seeker. I fell in love with her quickly, like getting hit over the head with a blunt object. It was aggressive and immediate. A couple of months later we got a place together, and the rest was history. We fell into a nice domestic routine. She made me coffee in the morning and kissed my forehead when I walked into the kitchen. We took turns cooking dinner and doing the dishes, and we watched hours of reality television slop on our sofa that was just big enough for two. We talked about the future. We talked about a dog and 2 kids and a yard. It all just fell into place. Her friends liked me, and my friends liked her, and our families were the same. My mother became a little too obsessed with having a grandchild, and I had to beg her to stop asking Chelsea about her cycle. But none of them knew about our secret life, the jobs we did together when everyone went home. It was just for us, and it was exciting, this secret hobby that we shared. The first call from OEM came on a quiet Friday. Chelsea was at her job as a barista, and I was at home getting some cleaning done before having lunch with my parents, like an old person. I was used to getting calls that didn't have identification, considering all my side jobs, so I didn't bat an eye at the NO caller ID on my screen. What was different, however, was the automated message that played as soon as I picked up the call. This call may be recorded for quality assurance and training purposes. Please state your first and last name and your date of birth. I frowned, tossing the rag I'd been cleaning the stove with onto the kitchen counter. Julian Rains, May 14, 1999. There was a silence, and then a beep. Then a man spoke, non-automated this time. Hello, Mr. Rains. I've been informed you might be looking for a job. When Chelsea got home, I was waiting for her on the couch. She came up behind me, cupped my face in her hands, and kissed the top of my head. Hey babe, I said, trying to keep the excitement out of my voice. How was work? Exhausting. She slumped over the back of the couch, smushing the cushions. But I got this crazy voicemail. The facility was in what looked, from the outside, like a dilapidated warehouse. The man who picked us up in a long black car was very quiet, answering our questions in single-word responses and keeping his eyes on the road. Chelsea and I kept giving each other small glances and squeezing each other's hands the entire way there. A man greeted us at the car door, opening it for us with a smile. He was tall and thin, and he wore a crisp suit with his dark hair slicked back, not a strand askew. Mr. and Mrs. Rains, I presume? Chelsea looked down shyly. I was surprised, she was never shy, but this situation definitely felt more professional than what we were used to. We aren't married. Oh, I'm sorry. The man tapped his forehead with the palm of his hand good-naturedly. I'm so sorry, Miss Sutherland. Miss Sutherland, of course. He reached out to shake her hand, and then mine, eager. My name is Malcolm Kessler. You can just call me Kessler. Would you like to know what you're doing here? We let Kessler lead us into the building. On the inside, it looked far less run down. We were greeted with long white hallways and bustling professionals holding coffees and clipboards, wearing matching white lab coats. Is this like a hospital? Chelsea asked, gazing around in awe. I took her hand again, and she gave it a squeeze. No, not a hospital, although there are medical professionals here, and we do certainly have access to those kinds of tools. He offered us a sly grin. We entered a room with a metal table and 4 chairs, and not much else. A woman with her hair tied up in a tight bun came in, placed a stack of papers on the table, and scurried away. Kessler gestured for us to take a seat. "This," he said slowly, looking from me to Chelsea and back again. "This is OEM. Do you know what that stands for?" He waited for us to shake our heads before continuing. "This is the Office of Enhanced Methods." I blinked at him, the white fluorescent lights making my eyes burn. "What does that mean?" "I'm glad you asked." Kessler leaned back in his seat, folding his hands in his lap. "Essentially, here at OEM, we test torture methods. See what works, see what doesn't, see what we need to change or scale back on. You know." I could feel Chelsea looking at me. I looked back. I couldn't quite read her expression, but somehow I still could get the gist. "Is this, a government project?" she asked, her eyes still locked on mine and her brows furrowing. Kessler chuckled. "You could say that. So why do you need us?" I asked, even though I felt I might know the answer, finally looking away from my girlfriend and back at the man in front of us. Kessler sighed, leaning forward again, resting his elbows on the table. He had quite a sharp face, but it managed to feel charming and welcoming purely from his expression. I wondered if he'd practiced that. "I'll level with you," he said, quieter than before. "We need volunteers. But finding volunteers for something like this is difficult. That's why now we're looking for people like you, people who are interested in doing odd jobs like this one, and we're offering a large amount of compensation." I pressed my lips together, searching his face for any sign of deception or exaggeration. I found none. I glanced back at Chelsea, who was looking at the stack of paperwork. "How much compensation?" I asked finally, when it became clear that no one else was going to say it. I expected Kessler to laugh. He didn't. "Are you two looking to get married?" I felt the room heat up. Truthfully, I had bought the ring a month ago. I was just waiting for the right time, and a time when we could properly plan for a wedding without the stress of becoming bankrupt for it. "Yes, I mean, eventually." "Have you seen how much those venues cost these days?" Kessler raised his eyebrows sympathetically, leaning even closer to us. "Not to mention a honeymoon. Are you looking to have kids, start a family? Send those kids to college, grow old and retire?" The man actually reached out, actually took my hand in one of his and Chelsea's in his other. I felt like the air in the room was being sucked out of it. "I'm going to be honest with you too. I am not going to mince words. It's tough out there right now. I could make it so you never have to worry about money again." He left us in the room to let us talk alone, and I could have sworn I heard the lock click behind him, but to be fair, I was feeling pretty jumpy by that point. Chelsea and I sat for a moment in silence. "This is a lot," she muttered, running her fingers through her hair. "This place is crazy." I reached over to flip through the paperwork, chewing on my bottom lip. I saw words like non-disclosure agreement, liability, medical care. I put the paperwork back down and took her hand again. "It's a lot of money." He seemed serious. "Would we be considered, like, war criminals if we took part in this?" She laughed, but I could tell she was anxious. I shrugged slowly. She rubbed at her face with her free hand, a nervous habit of hers. I reached over and tucked some hair behind her ear, smiling. She smiled back apprehensively. There was something neither of us were saying, something neither of us wanted to point out. How bad was the job to offer that amount of compensation? Still, there was a buzz between us. This was what we did. We signed up for strange things for the experiences. Chelsea lived for things like this. I think I knew the second we got there that she would end up wanting to do it. When Kessler came back, I stood up, pushing my chair back and wiping my sweaty hands on my jeans. What kind of torture are we talking about? His smile was wide. I can show you now, if you'd like. He explained as he led us back down the hall, guiding us into a different room that was essentially the exact same as the one we had just been in, but with more cameras mounted on the walls and with different chairs. I winced a little when I saw the wrist and ankle restraints attached to the sterile metal frame. Everything we do here stays within these walls, he told us, gesturing for us to take a seat. Chelsea and I shared a look, then obeyed, communication-wise, but also physically. We will do nothing to permanently damage you, and we have medical staff on site for any treatment you may need. As if on cue, a man in one of the lab coats bustled into the room, pushing a cart. He began strapping down our wrists, leaving our legs unrestrained. Everything is voluntary, Kessler continued. Nothing will happen to you without your explicit consent, although we may need to withhold some details in order to get the most accurate read on your reactions. You can leave or discontinue your contracts at any time. The man in the lab coat started putting on medical gloves. I swallowed hard. What is he going to do? Kessler nodded at the man, who procured a syringe from his cart, examining the needle carefully and then picking up a little glass bottle to draw from. This is just, let's call it a sample. This is something we've been working on for a while. It's already been tested many times with a high success rate. I wondered what a high success rate in this context was. A large sum of pain? The right amount of screaming? Usually, we'd probably hook you up to various brainwave sensors, but we'll start light today. The doctor, was he a doctor? Approached Chelsea, who squirmed anxiously. He wiped her arm with an alcohol swab and began feeling around for a good vein. I watched her, trying to look encouraging when her eyes met mine. This is a sort of liquid electrocution, per se. Before either of us could reply to that, the doctor was inserting the needle into Chelsea's arm and pushing down on the plunger. I watched her body seize up, her eyes going wide and glassy. She was perfectly still for a moment, save for her mouth falling open and her entire face going slack. And then she began to twitch and spasm, her limbs jerking with no control. Then she screamed, a gurgling, horrifying sound, and I was struck with panic. I was so distracted I barely felt the needle sliding into my own arm. And then it felt like I was being set on fire. We didn't go back to that place for a couple of months. Kessler told us to take our time, to think about it, as he handed us a tall stack of dollar bills. The feeling of the money almost bulging out of my pocket almost made up for the pain. He had told the truth. It didn't last. It felt like the effects of the injection lasted an hour, but we were told it had only been a few minutes before it wore off. I expected to be weak leaving the facility, and prepared myself to be embarrassed to handle it worse than my girlfriend did, but the feeling faded fast. In fact, I almost felt more alive. We were given a brief interview where a younger man scribbled extensive notes, and then we were free to go. The first thing Chelsea said to me when we got outside was, "What a rush." Still, we waited a while. It felt like a next step in our odd jobs hobby to make this a regular thing, like something a little bit depraved. It was dystopian, it was strange and scary. Even though the sensation was gone, I could vividly remember what the injection had done to me, how it had torn through my veins, how I had wondered if I was dying. And that was supposed to just be a sample. But eventually, neither of us could stay away. The money was good, beyond good. At first, we kept it a secret from each other, as if we were doing something bad. She would head off to work, and I would drive to the warehouse. They would inject me, feed me things that made me sick, toss me around, even beat me, and then I would drive home, still reeling and sore. Chelsea started acting strange, staying up after I went to bed, but I couldn't exactly call her out on it, because I was being strange too. Neither of us wanted to put any pressure on the other, I guess. And I don't think either of us liked the idea of the other getting tortured. It was all but confirmed in my mind that we were both doing the same thing when I caught her coming through the front door at almost 3 a.m., rubbing at her temple like she had a horrible migraine. I was sitting on the couch, reading a book, waiting for her. She stopped cold, her eyes going wide. I couldn't help but chuckle. "Cheating on me?" I asked. She laughed, plopping down next to me on the couch. "Not exactly." I pulled her to me, and she rested her head on my shoulder. "Let's just do it together, okay? From now on, let's just go together." I waited for an answer, but after a minute, all I got was a snore. We went together the next weekend. Kessler greeted us, patting each of us on our backs cheerfully. "Great to see you two together again. The work you both have been doing here is just fantastic." Chelsea and I eyed each other, and she gave me a little punch on the arm. I grinned at her. "I have something different for you two today, now that you're here together, if you're up for it." My smile faded a little, twisting into mild concern. I licked my lips. "Different how?" He waved me off, guiding us into one of the rooms. The same chairs greeted us, with their cuffs and restraints. A doctor was already inside, toying with some kind of strap. It looked sort of like a headband. "We'd like to try something more psychological than you're used to." I stopped in my tracks. Kessler and Chelsea both turned to face me, their eyebrows raising in sync. Psychological torture? I was getting vivid images in my head, all of the psychological horror movies I'd ever seen rushing back to me. Physical pain was one thing, but sanity was delicate, something that shouldn't be played with. Kessler approached me, placing his hands on each of my shoulders, and offered me a reassuring smile. "Think about it, Mr. Rains," he said, his voice kind. "It will be a brief test. It'll only last around 30 seconds. Like I've said, nothing will leave this facility, and we have professionals to assess your mental state directly afterwards. 30 seconds for enough money to buy a used car." I worried my lips together, the fear I'd had in the past creeping back in. If it wasn't dangerous, why was it worth so much? Worth more than we'd been paid for anything before? "Come on, Jules." Chelsea smiled at me from behind him. She didn't look afraid, and it soothed me a little. "We'll do it together." I nodded reluctantly. Almost as soon as my chin raised to do so, the doctor was slipping the headband on, two metal plates digging into my forehead. I felt my muscles tense up. We took our seats, and Chelsea reached over to grab my hand. They didn't strap us down this time, which I hardly thought about until after it was too late. The doctor put Chelsea's headband on too, and she made a face at me, which made me bite back a laugh. "Ready?" Kessler asked. Then he nodded at the doctor, who pressed something on what looked like a keyboard, and Julie started to scream. The second he touched the thing, she was screaming. It wasn't like any scream I had ever heard before, not like the one from the first time we'd been here, and not in any horror movie. Certainly never in real life. It felt like my eardrums were bursting, and it only grew louder and more shrill. It was desperate. It was beyond torture, beyond pain, beyond anything a human could possibly endure. I imagined hell. I imagined that souls being dragged to damnation might sound something like that scream. I wasn't even religious. She squeezed my hand, and I felt my bones cracking. "Chelsea! Chelsea!" I rocketed out of my seat, trying to shake her, trying to ignore the searing pain. She wouldn't let go of my hand, couldn't. Her eyes were wide open and dead, looking right at me but not seeing anything. Still, tears streamed from them, more tears than I'd ever seen anyone cry. I whipped back around. The doctor was typing urgently at his computer, and Kessler was staring, his hands out and his eyes moving rapidly back and forth like he was in shock. Jesus Christ, do something! I screamed. Fucking do something! Chelsea was gasping now, a ragged sound that bounced around in my head. It felt like I could hear nothing but that horrible wet gasp, just dead air and her throat clawing for breath, drool seeping from her mouth and down her chin. Finally, I ripped the headband off her. Instantly she went slack, letting go of my hand. The room was silent for a moment. Then Kessler muttered something to the other man, and the doctor rushed out the door. Chelsea, Chelsea, baby, are you okay? I kneeled in front of her, rubbing her knee. She wouldn't look at me, wouldn't move. For a second, I wondered if she was dead. Please answer me. Right when I was about to check her pulse, her head turned. She wasn't screaming anymore, but her eyes were just as dead as they had been before when they met mine. They didn't even look like her eyes anymore. She opened her mouth, and out of it came a horrible whispery sound, like she'd forgotten how to use her tongue. I leaned in closer, trying to smile at her weakly. What is it, honey? Please, she gasped. No more. I felt hot. I felt like I had a horrible fever. I reached up, touched her wet face. It's over, baby. No more. It's over. She stared at me, if you could call it that. She wasn't in her body anymore. This was something else. She twitched. Just kill me. I turned back to look at Kessler. He looked just as shocked as I did, anxiously adjusting his tie. For a long moment we met eyes, and I knew what he was thinking. Something had gone horribly, unbelievably wrong here, and he didn't know how to fix it. The next few hours were a horrible blur. I remember doctors rushing around, wheeling Chelsea out of the room despite my pleas to know where they were going, to let me go with them. I sat alone in the cold, sterile room, her scream echoing around in my head. I cried. I begged the cameras in the corners of the room. I banged my head against the table. Someone came in and bandaged up my broken hand, but no one would tell me anything. It felt like days that I was in there. Honestly, it could have been. When the door finally opened again and Kessler stepped through it, I couldn't even feel relieved. I just felt broken. Where is she? I croaked, raising my head. Is she okay? He said nothing, just sat down in front of me. He was back to business. The horrified expression I'd last seen him have completely wiped away, although I could have sworn his face was a little pale. He took an envelope out of his pocket and placed it on the metal table between us. Miss Sutherland is right outside. She's unharmed and feeling fine. I choked out a sob. I couldn't help it. I hid my face in my hands. Kessler cleared his throat and continued. You are to take this envelope. Inside is a check for $700,000. One of our drivers is going to take you to the emergency room, where you will have your hand properly treated. Any further medical bills will be completely covered by us. You are to do this, and then go home and never return here. Do you understand? I looked up at him, and I nodded. I was angry. I wanted to yell, demand answers, threaten to sue. But I was far too exhausted for any of that. I just wanted to see Chelsea. I just wanted to go home. Kessler nodded, his mouth pressed into a thin line. We at OEM are terribly ashamed about what took place today. Please accept our deepest condolences. Something about that rubbed me the wrong way, made my skin prickle, but my mind was numb. I just nodded again, taking the envelope and shoving it into my pocket. Chelsea was just outside like he'd said, and she smiled when she saw me. I gathered her in my arms and squeezed, breathing in the scent of her hair, kissing the side of her neck. "Thank God you're okay. Hey, don't cry." She pulled back, kissing my cheek and wiping away my tears. "I'm more than okay, baby." What a rush. A laugh burst out of me like an uncontrollable cough. "You're a psychopath. You like it." As promised, we were taken to the hospital, where I was put in a cast. My hand was broken in 3 different places. As Chelsea sat with me while they examined it, a horrible, anxious feeling crept over me. When I looked at her, all she did was smile. I couldn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, white spots drifting across my vision, my hand throbbing dully on my chest. Chelsea's back pressed against the side of my arm was the only thing that made me feel any calmer. I turned to look at the back of her head, chewing on my lip. The room felt too quiet, too dark after spending so long in that bright, sterile room. I was restless. "Chelsea," I whispered, "are you awake?" She said nothing. She wasn't snoring, but I swore I could hear her heart beating. Ka-thunk, ka-thunk, ka-thunk. I sighed. "What did you feel when it was happening?" I knew she wouldn't respond, but I asked anyways. I needed to talk, even if it was just to myself. Ka-thunk, ka-thunk. I felt her shift a little, her back moving with each of her breaths. Her heartbeat began to speed up. Only then did I begin to wonder why I could hear it at all, and so loud. I sat up a little, leaning on my elbows. I stroked her hair. "Hey, baby, are you okay?" No answer. Ka-thunk, ka-thunk, ka-thunk. Suddenly, I had that feeling. I had that feeling children get at night, when they become positive there's someone in the closet or just outside their bedroom door, someone they don't know. Panic raced through me, and whether it was rational or not, I had to see her face. I had to be sure she was alive, and she was herself, and she was real. I reached over and took her arm, rolling her towards me. Chelsea's eyes were wide open, bloodshot, and my heart jumped into my throat when I realized it hadn't been her heartbeat that I had been hearing. It had been her gasping for air, her throat closing and opening again rapidly, swallowing and heaving dryly in the dark like an animal about to throw up. Ka-thunk, ka-thunk, ka-thunk. I shook her awake, sitting straight up in the bed. She gasped, blinking at me almost sleepily, rubbing at her eyes. "Julian." Her voice was raspy, tired and dry, but otherwise normal. I flicked on the bedside lamp, breathing hard. "Babe, what's wrong?" I shook my head. I couldn't look at her, couldn't breathe. I felt her wrap her arms around me, shushing me gently and stroking my hair. You were." "Shoo, it's okay. It's okay now, Jules, I'm okay. Just a bad dream." But it wasn't a dream. I knew it wasn't. After that, my girlfriend was different. She wasn't herself. I tried to go back to normal. She certainly tried to. She went to work like before, saw her friends, watched television with me on our couch. But it didn't feel like she was really there anymore. She didn't sleep much at all, and when she did, it was strange and restless. I more than once caught her sleeping with her eyes wide open, just like that first night. Once I asked her what her dreams had been like recently, and she hesitated before telling me. "You know how when meat is fresh, and the muscles are still alive, so they move and squirm even though the animal is dead?" She smiled and ruffled my hair. "That's what the backs of my eyelids look like." The worst part was how normal she pretended to be. How fine she told me she felt, how she kissed me like always, and how she tried to joke, but it never came out quite right. I reached my limit one night a month later when I got home after having a drink with some friends. The house was completely dark, completely silent, completely still. The second I opened the door, I felt it. The unexplainable terror. Like there was a man in the closet. It didn't feel right in there. Nothing felt like it was in the right place, even though I knew it must have been. Everything just felt wrong. Chelsea! I called out quietly, shrugging off my jacket, wet from the rain. Are you awake, honey? No answer. I went to go upstairs when I saw her. She was down our hallway. Her head was half poking out around the corner, only her eyes showing in the darkness, wide open. Staring at me, but not seeing me. She started to scream, and it was even worse to not be able to see her mouth. She screamed in short bursts, like a panting dog, the blood-curdling sounds jolting out of her. Fight or flight kicked in. I turned around and walked right back out the door, closing it behind me. I walked until I was across the street before looking back at the house. She was in our bedroom window, the lights turned on, illuminating her silhouette. I watched her rear back and slam her head into the glass once. Then again, something dark and liquid trickling down to the frame. The paramedics had to tie her down to keep her from thrashing or from hurting herself. I watched as they took her away, begging them to kill her. I tried to call OEM, but all I got was a message that the number had been disconnected. I drove back there while she was still in the hospital, but there was nothing left but an empty warehouse. When I picked her up, she was completely normal again, the only proof of the episode being the stitches on her forehead. It was that day, the day I picked her up, when I felt completely broken down and helpless, that I started to hear her voice. Honey. I looked over at my girlfriend, or what my girlfriend had become. She was staring out the window, smiling peacefully. What was that? She glanced at me, her smile widening. Nothing, Julian. I didn't say anything. I turned back to the road, convinced I was just losing my mind. I had to be. It would make sense. But then I heard it again. Julian, open your eyes, honey. It's okay. Jesus Christ, Kessler, would you take that thing off him? I think he's had enough. It's been weeks since then now. We're home, we're safe, or at least that's what Chelsea says. I'm trying to believe her. I know it was in my head. I know it was just whatever that device did to me. But it felt so real when it was happening. I'm terrified one day I'll wake up again in that room, and I don't think if I did I would bounce back so quickly. Story number 3. My friend showed me a new dating app for lonely people. There are some very strange rules in the terms and conditions. I don't get it. I swirled my straw around in my iced pecan latte, not the manliest drink choice, but Amaya had turned me onto them, and now I couldn't go back to whatever I had ordered before. I would never be the same. Yeah, Josh, Amaya chimed in, leaning back in her chair almost precariously, the front legs tilting off the ground. Me neither. It looks like Grindr. I snorted. It does kind of look like Grindr. How would you even know that, Cooper? I mean, I've seen what Grindr looks like. Have you never seen what Grindr looks like? My head whipped between them, searching for understanding in Josh's face and sympathy in Amaya's. I only found laughter. I crossed my arms and sulked. Guys, I know it's weird, Josh finally continued. He pinched his baseball cap by the bill and spun it around so it was backwards, leaning forward and holding out his phone for us to look at. Doing that was almost a nervous tic for him. It had to be 50 times a day that he rotated his hat like that when he was wearing one, just to rotate it back again. Sometimes I joked that he was going to make his hair curly like that. I don't even know who made this. Jackson said they found it on the dark web or something. Your cousin Jackson? You're not really falling for that, are you? Amaya smirked at him, leaning on her elbows and chewing on her straw. He's definitely messing with you. He just glared at her and kept going. Some people think it's like promotion for a movie or something. Some people think the people on here are dead. Dead? Like ghosts or something. He shrugged loosely, his face blank. Dunno. There's just a lot of theories. They could also just be bots or something. So what's the point of using this? I chimed in, slurping loudly at the last hints of liquid in my cup. I got a couple dirty looks from some old ladies at the table next to us, and I smiled apologetically. You're just making it sound sketchy. Josh grinned, coming alive. He rotated his hat again and leaned in closer, like he was going to tell us a juicy secret. Amaya and I glanced at each other. People are finding love, apparently, he whisper-yelled. Like, on the app? With the ghosts/bots? He shook his head. No, not exactly. I think the point of the app is that it figures out your type or something, and then you just find someone exactly like that. They're drawn to you or something. So now this is some tarot card universe soulmate bullshit? Amaya always joked like this, but I could tell she was getting legitimately a little frustrated with him. I didn't blame her. Her emotions had been all over the place lately, since she and Sean broke up. I felt guilty for feeling a little relieved they finally ended it, considering it meant she had more time to hang out with us, because I knew she was having a horrible time with it. They had been together for 2 years. Things like that were a big deal. I, on the other hand, hadn't had a girlfriend in years. I hadn't even been on a date in longer than I wanted to admit, and even if I could get a date, I didn't think I'd know what to do with the opportunity. I thought college would be a constant party where I was meeting girls left and right, but so far I had been sorely mistaken. I couldn't lie, what Josh was saying sounded appealing in theory. If it was real, that was, which it wasn't. Listen, Josh said, offering her a crooked smile. I know it sounds fucking insane. It definitely is insane. I haven't even gotten to the weirdest part yet. What's the weirdest part then, Josh? She brushed some dark brown curls away from her eyes, scowling at her own iced latte. Spit it out. Check this out. He held out his phone again, and Amaya and I both leaned in to look. It was the same screen he'd shown us before, the one that looked a little bit like Grindr, with a black background, and the only thing on the page were a list of open chats. He tapped on a little question mark in the top right corner, and that was when the terms and conditions popped up. Terms and conditions. 1. If someone messages you that you would like to speak with, you must reply within 10 minutes of receiving the message. 2. If you do not wish to speak to someone, you must repeat this phrase word for word. Thank you for your interest, but I am not open at this time. I wish you good luck with finding what you want. 3. If you wish to stop speaking to someone, repeat the phrase above. 4. If someone continues messaging you after you have sent the phrase above, get to high ground, lock all doors and windows, and contact customer support immediately. Delete the app. Do not download the app. 5. Do not message anyone between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. 6. Always say good night before you go to sleep. 7. Always say good morning as soon as you wake up. 8. Always be polite. 9. Do not send more than one message at a time. 10. Do not offer them anything to eat. 11. Do not agree to meet up with anyone on the app. Do not tell them where you are, even if they say that they already know. Do not invite them into your home. 12. If they are near your home, get to high ground, lock all doors and windows, and contact customer support immediately. Delete the app. Do not download the app. 13. Do not let them trick you. They will try. 14. We are not responsible for any negative consequences of using the app. Amaya and I just stared at the page for a long time, both of our eyes skimming over the words once, twice, 3 times. Finally, Amaya leaned back, rubbing at her face with the palms of her hands. This has to be a joke. Josh shrugged, setting his phone down. It's crazy, I know. Did you agree to all of that? I asked him. I felt a little uneasy, my stomach churning. The pecan latte wasn't sitting well anymore. Have you been using this? He shrugged again, now looking a little bit embarrassed. Listen, I know it sounds insane, but it's just for fun. I just want to see if it's real. Jackson met this girl like a week after using the app for the first time, and I met her, and she's really normal and nice. I find that hard to believe. Amaya's face was red, and she kept nervously tucking her hair behind her ears. Look, if you're messing with me, like if you're both in on this is a really shitty prank to pull on me right now. No. Both Josh and I cried out at the same time, getting a couple more weird looks. No, Amaya, it's not a prank, Josh finished. I promise. It's just something weird I found, and I wanted to tell you guys about it. Whatever, she huffed, pushing to her feet and slinging her bag over her shoulder. Just whatever. I don't feel good. I'll talk to you guys later. Amaya. I trailed off as she slammed her half-empty coffee cup into the trash and briskly strode toward the door. Josh and I shared a look. Dude, I swear I wasn't trying to mess with her, he said after a while, searching my face to gauge my belief in him. I nodded, wiping my sweaty palms off on my jeans. I know. It's okay. She just isn't doing well right now. I hesitated for a long moment, chewing on my bottom lip, before I spoke again. Jackson really met someone. I downloaded the app that night. I wasn't proud of it, but my curiosity became stronger than my uneasiness, and, as embarrassing as it was to admit, I was getting desperate. I just wanted someone. I wanted to meet someone nice and pretty that I could go places with, and I wasn't having luck anywhere else. I considered it a win-win. If this app was just some bullshit prank, then we could get a good laugh out of it, and if it wasn't, that meant it was real. Josh had sent the link to our group chat with Amaya, and she immediately responded by reacting to the message with a thumbs down. That meant that, even if she was still a little peeved, at the very least she wasn't upset anymore. It was a good sign. I pressed on the link and then agreed to download, crossing my fingers and praying for no horrible virus. The app really was incredibly bare bones. Nothing but a messaging screen, which was empty so far in my case. There wasn't anything else to look at, other than the terms and conditions, which I read again. No one to swipe on, no bios to read, nothing. I was brushing my teeth when I got my first message. My phone buzzed, and I nearly choked on my toothpaste when I read the notification. Noel, hello handsome. For some reason, the smiley emoticon unnerved me. I checked the time, 11:30 p.m. So I was fine on that rule. I pressed on the message, and her profile popped up. There was no bio, just a name and a picture to look at. I studied it closely, my eyebrows cinching together. The picture was of a girl, looking definitely somewhere close to my age. She had shoulder-length curly dark hair and dark skin, and she was posing in a yellow field, wearing a flowery dress. It looked normal to me at first, but the closer I looked, the more off it felt. Her smile looked stiff, almost like it was painted on, and something about her eyes wasn't quite right. Her pupils looked strange, but I couldn't put my finger on exactly how. Something about that picture filled me with a sense of dread that I couldn't fully place either. I panicked, and I checked the terms and conditions again before composing my message before the 10 minutes could pass. Just in case. Cooper, thank you for your interest, but I am not open at this time. I wish you luck in finding what you want. I waited. 3 little typing bubbles popped up, and then they disappeared. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I sighed in relief and shut my phone off. I woke up to 2 more messages from other women. One was named Alyssa, and one was named Jody. My heart began to race. They had messaged during the night, so it had been 10 minutes before I replied, right? The words scrolled across the backs of my eyes like subtitles. You must reply within 10 minutes of receiving the message. Had I broken that rule? But then again, I wasn't supposed to message back at night. So surely it didn't count. I typed my responses, not bothering to look too closely at their profiles yet, not wanting to psych myself out. Alyssa, hi. Cooper, hi, good morning, smiley face. Jody, hello, how are you today? Cooper, hello, good morning. I'm doing well, how are you? I tried to match their energy. I made sure to be polite, and I also made sure to say good morning. I couldn't get my heart rate to slow down while I got ready for work, and I couldn't get over the dread I had felt when I thought I might have broken the rule. I knew it probably wasn't real, but what if it was? What would happen to me if I didn't follow the terms and conditions? At work, I got in trouble more than once for checking my phone between waiting tables. I couldn't help it. Even if it was a stupid joke, I didn't want to find out. I only got one message from someone new, someone named Sunny, and I caught it after 8 minutes had already passed since it was sent. I was anxious and restless all day, all the way until it was nearly midnight, when I could finally relax a little. The other girls had messaged me a couple of times throughout the day, and I had replied politely, asking them questions about things they like to do and places they like to go. Everything really seemed fairly average, besides the very slight hint of stiffness in the way they talked, and the strange qualities about all of their profile pictures. Maybe they really were just well-trained bots. The thought made me feel a little better. They probably weren't even real. The only thing out of the ordinary was one message from Alyssa. Alyssa, would you want to take me out to dinner some night this week? Get something to eat. Of course, in normal circumstances, this wouldn't have been a strange thing to say at all. But I remembered it at the last second. Do not offer them anything to eat. I told her I was extra busy that week, and I just wanted to get to know her first. She had typed for a long time before responding with, okay. Before it could get to midnight, I sent my goodnights and let out a long, shaky breath. I called Josh. Hey man, how's it going? He sounded out of breath. He must have been on his nightly run. I had tried telling him it was crazy to go on runs in the middle of the night, and so had Amaya, but he didn't listen. He was a white, straight, mostly muscular man. He had nothing to be scared of. He was invincible. This app is stressful, dude. I lay back in my bed, closing my eyes. It's taking a lot out of me. I heard Josh laugh on the other end, slightly choppy and still breathless. Don't take it too seriously. Like I was saying, it could definitely just be some movie promotion or something. Also, you get used to it. I have. Yeah. I trailed off. Have you talked to Amaya? A little. Why? I'm just worried about her. She's been so out of it lately. Yeah. We should do something for her, man. Like, plan something. I couldn't help but smile. The 3 of us had been inseparable since freshman orientation, when we had been put in a group. I had thought it wouldn't last, that it would just be a case of freshman friend group, but it had. I felt lucky to have found both of them in such a big school in such a big area. Yeah, we should. Let's hang out tomorrow. Sure thing. I went to bed that night feeling a little bit better, and a little less anxious. I woke up to tons of messages. A couple of new ones, but mostly pages of ones from the girls I had already spoken to. Alyssa. Cooper. Alyssa, don't go to bed. Talk to me, Cooper. Alyssa, I miss you. Alyssa, can I come over? Alyssa, I'm moving soon. Could you help me move? Alyssa, you could make me dinner. Alyssa, Cooper, wake up. Alyssa, I'm all alone. Alyssa, and I'm cold. Alyssa, it's so cold. I shivered. I didn't even bother reading through the other messages, just responded with a good morning and apologized for not responding the night before. I wasn't sure this app was for me. The next few days went by without much of a hitch. The girls on the app were creepy, but they seemed harmless, and I was careful to follow all of the rules. I kept telling myself that even if these girls freaked me out, they weren't even the ones I would end up with. If this app worked, I would meet someone who was perfect for me very, very soon, and then I could delete it and forget about it forever. I would give it another week or so. Then I was going to give up. That was until Josh came into my job on a Wednesday. I saw him waiting outside the break room, his face pointed down, wringing his hands anxiously. The first thing I noticed was that he had no hat on. The second thing was that he was crying. What's wrong? I asked him, frowning and looking him over. Is everything okay, dude? He shook his head, finally looking up and meeting my eyes. I saw horror in them, and some other emotion that I hadn't seen from him maybe ever. Amaya is missing, Cooper. She's gone. One thought struck me all at once, the first stupid thought I had. Did she download it too? Everything after that felt like a huge gray blur. My manager gave me the day off work, and I went with Josh, following him to the police station. I sat in their gray room, I answered their questions. I tried not to cry when they told me that her roommate had reported her missing after she hadn't seen her for over 24 hours. I tried not to panic when they told me her roommate also found the window broken that morning and some blood staining the carpet, but there was no body down on the ground, no other traces of anything. I felt so guilty. I should have texted her more. I should have been calling and checking in on her. I had just been so distracted by work and by the stupid app. The only thing keeping us from ruling it a suicide is the lack of a body, a female cop told me, clearly trying to be gentle. She placed a hand on my arm. Her roommate tells us she was going through a breakup. I felt myself fill with painful, searing rage. Amaya wouldn't do that. I looked the cop in the eyes, trying to make the eye contact burn. I promise. I could tell she didn't believe me. I stayed over at Josh's place. We both shuffled around like zombies, basically communicating only through either grunts of acknowledgement or shaky, quiet conversations about any updates. There were none to talk about. I completely forgot about the app. I forgot about it until about a week after she disappeared. My phone had been buzzing non-stop the entire week, but most of the time, I had it entirely shut off. Some of my messages had been from my family, Amaya's family, and our classmates and friends, and some had been from the stupid app, but I couldn't bring myself to reply to many of them at all. But then I got a notification that caught my eye. Amaya, hi Cooper. It took me longer than I would like to admit to realize what I was looking at. At first I thought it was a text message, and my heart soared up into my throat. Then I realized it was the app. When I opened it up, I was bombarded with messages, both from new people and old ones. The old fear I'd felt about the app began to resurface, bubbling up like bile. Alyssa, Cooper, I'm coming over. Alyssa, I can come over now. Alyssa, I know where you are. Alyssa, can I come over? Alyssa, answer me. Cooper, I'm going to come over. Jody, meet me. Jody, please meet me. Jody, please meet me. Jody, now. Jody, now. Jody, N. Sunny, cold. I ignored all of them, despite the horrible, sick feeling in my gut. I opened the one from Amaya. I looked at her profile picture. It was her. It was a picture of her I had never seen before. It was dark outside and taken with flash. Her hair was down, falling around her face in the way that she couldn't stand, her chin tilted a little to the side. She was smiling in the way that first girl was. Wrong. Stiff and strange and wrong. That wasn't her smile, and those weren't her eyes. They were far too dull, and very slightly pointing in different directions. Cooper, Amaya? Cooper, is that really you? Cooper, are you okay? The three bubbles popped up, then disappeared, then popped up again. I stood up, beginning to pace. Should I call Josh? Should I call the police? Was this some sort of sick joke? Finally, my phone buzzed. Amaya, I am near your home. I started to cry. I couldn't help it. I wanted to throw my phone. I wanted to break it. Cooper, where are you? What happened to you? Amaya, 10 feet. I stared at the message. I felt like my vision was going out. Cooper, 10 feet from where? Amaya, it's cold here. I swallowed hard. It felt like swallowing rocks. Cooper, thank you for your interest, but I am not open at this time. I wish you luck in finding what you want. Amaya, 6 feet. Amaya, cold. Amaya, and dark. I knew what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to lock the doors and the windows, get to high ground, and call customer support. But I couldn't. All I could do was stare. Stare at my phone, at her messages, frozen like a deer in headlights. And the headlights were coming so fast, I couldn't see or breathe or think. She was typing again. As my phone buzzed, my blood ran completely cold. It was 1:56 a.m. No one was there. No one but me and whatever it was. I wasn't even sure if I could stop shaking enough to call the police, and I definitely couldn't hide, not then. And I had broken nearly all of the rules. Amaya, let me in. Cooper. Amaya, I have to show you where it took me. I finally managed to hide. I'm hiding now, in my attic. I can hear it down there, dragging itself from room to room. My phone is going to die and none of my calls will go through, but I had to write this down. I had to tell someone. Josh, if you read this, I hope you're okay. I hope you followed the rules. I don't know where Amaya is, but that's not Amaya. And if you see me again, I'm not sure it'll be me either. I'm sorry. It's typing again. I've broken one last rule. I didn't delete the app. Wish me luck. Story number 4. Looking back now, I gotta admit, I feel pretty damn stupid. Like, I was totally oblivious. I should have known that apartment was way too cheap to be legit, even for a tiny studio. There had to be some kind of catch, but I just didn't see it at the time. All I cared about was finally having my own place, away from all the chaos of my family and the noise of the city. I thought I was being smart, renting that place, but man, I was so wrong. The day I moved in was a total rush. I didn't want anyone helping me. No family, no friends. I wanted to do it all on my own, prove I could handle it. So, I carried all my boxes up the stairs, sweat pouring down my face, muscles aching like I'd been lifting weights all day. When I finally got inside, I plopped onto the bed, exhausted and sore, staring up at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me. It was a small, dingy room, but it was mine now. Well, kind of. I brushed the damp strands of hair off my forehead and closed my eyes for a moment, trying to relax. Then, out of nowhere, there was a knock at the door. I jolted, my heart pounding like a drum. I wasn't expecting anyone, and honestly, I wasn't in the mood for visitors. I hesitated for a second, then slowly pushed myself up onto my elbows, feeling every muscle in my body protest. Before I could even say anything, the door creaked open a little, and two girls peeked inside. Yeah, I had left the door wide open, totally forgetting the basic rule. Only leave your door open if you want to make friends or invite trouble. And honestly, I wasn't trying to make friends tonight. The first girl was Asian, with choppy black hair that looked like she had just rolled out of bed but still somehow managed to look confident. She was smiling at me, her eyes bright and curious. The second girl was standing a little further back, fiddling nervously with a pack of Marlboro Reds she had tucked into her pocket. She had long, red braids and a kind of mischievous look on her face. "Hey," the first girl said casually, giving me a little nod. Her voice was smooth but with a sharp edge, like she wasn't afraid to speak her mind. "Did you just move in?" I looked at them, trying to process what was happening. I was still sweaty, exhausted, and honestly, I just wanted to be left alone. I gave a small grunt, rubbing my face with both hands. "Yeah, about 5 seconds ago," I mumbled, not bothering to hide my fatigue. "Cool," she replied, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Her friend hesitated for a second, then followed, still fiddling with her pack of cigarettes. The girl with black hair ran her fingers along the edge of my desk, then picked up a little ceramic duck from one of my unpacked boxes of random stuff. I could tell she was trying to act casual, but her eyes kept flickering to me like she was sizing me up. "Grandma," I muttered, feeling a little defensive. I didn't know who these girls were or what they wanted, and I wasn't about to pretend I was happy to see them. "Cute," she said, holding up the ceramic duck to her face and inspecting it like it was some kind of treasure. "Has anyone told you yet?" the red-haired girl asked suddenly, glancing around my apartment. She looked at me with a mischievous grin, like she was waiting for some kind of reaction. "Jesus, Gianna," her friend said sharply. "Give her a second, will you?" "Well, she needs to know," Gianna started, but the other girl cut her off. "Yeah, but we haven't even asked her her name yet," she said, flashing me a quick smile. I blinked at them, totally stunned. I hadn't even had time to put toilet paper in my bathroom, and here these strangers were, touching my stuff like it was theirs and talking about me like I wasn't even there. I felt a rush of annoyance and confusion. Honestly, I just wanted to be left alone, to get settled, to figure out what the hell was going on. Yeah, I finally managed to say, voice hoarse from exhaustion. "My name's Alex." They looked at each other, then back at me, their expressions a mix of curiosity and mischief. "All right, Alex," Gianna said with a grin. "Welcome to the neighborhood." I didn't really know what to say. I just wanted to lie down, close the door, and pretend I hadn't seen these girls. But something in their eyes told me this wasn't going to be the last time I saw them. And honestly, I had a feeling that was just the beginning of a very strange night. I don't know if I can ever explain it, but I'll try. "Hey, Arden, there's someone on the phone for you. Would you come here?" I looked up from the book I had been pretending to read, resting against my folded up legs. I often found myself in this position these days, sitting in my parents' kitchen on the window nook, crumpled up as tightly as I could manage. Every morning my back ached like I had aged 40 years overnight. My mother stood in the doorway, tapping her foot impatiently. She did it like she thought I would think she was being subtle, one hand on her hip and the other clutching our boxy landline phone. I blinked in surprise. On the landline? Not everyone has a fancy new cell phone, Arden. Now take it. My hand is cramping up. I was surprised at how easy it had been to move out of the apartments, but I wasn't surprised my parents had let me move back in. I expected more pushback from our landlord, but my parents, my mother specifically, it was like she was always waiting for me to prove her right. When I told her I was coming home, she sighed, and I swore I could hear the hint of a smile in her tone. What happened now, honey? But I knew I couldn't complain, and she knew it too. I had reached the end of the line. There was nothing else to do. After what I saw, I wasn't sure I could ever live alone again, frankly. I stood and walked over to her, thanking her under my breath and taking the phone. She huffed and marched off, and I was left there alone, staring at the receiver, my face slack. It was like I knew before I even brought it up to my ear. Hello. Who is this? Hey, Arden. Her voice was angry, a hint of red-hot frustration weaving between each punchy letter, but there was something else there too. I felt my face go pale. Sorry to call you like this. You haven't been answering yourself, so I found this number in the phone book. Guilt stabbed at my gut like a hot poker. I glanced over at my cell phone, which sat on the kitchen table. I knew it had been wrong, but I had blocked all of their numbers the day after I got out of there. I didn't want to think about it, any of it. I didn't want any connection to that cursed place. Hi, Gianna. Yeah, hi, she snapped, sounding more annoyed by the second. Look, I know you had to leave. I get that. We would too if that was an option. She trailed off, leaving the rest unsaid, but heavily implied. I was simply luckier than they were. But you need to come back. What? I exclaimed, louder than I meant to. I winced, only continuing when I heard no angry shout to quiet down from the other room. What? Why? She sighed loudly, and it was like I could hear her face sinking. I could hear her resolve slipping, and her feet pacing around her room. I knew that something had to be wrong, something worse than what had already been wrong. Something big. It's May, she said finally, and my heart jumped. The hot poker in my stomach twisted. Listen, I can't explain over the phone. I just need you to come back. It's important. I faltered. I felt my eyes sting. As soon as I left, I knew I could never come back. I could never associate myself with that place ever again. Nothing about that neighborhood made any sense to me. I didn't trust it. I didn't even know if I could trust Gianna. But May, the day I left, her eyes were still swollen. She hadn't stopped weeping since Will was taken. Don't go, she said to me. She couldn't even look at me, her head bowed, sitting motionless on her bed. I'm sorry. Something bad will happen if you go. I just feel it. Please don't go, Arden. I knew. I just didn't want to know. I knew if something had happened to May, I had to go back. There was no choice, no third option. It was my fault. Arden, Gianna said, after the silence had hung in the air between us for a good minute. Please. Okay, I'll come back. Good. Great. Just be subtle, okay? They're everywhere right now. I heard the phone click, my mouth hanging open to reply, to ask what the hell she meant by that. By the time I reached the neighborhood, dusk was creeping across the skyline. I felt a shiver run up my spine, recalling vividly what happened here at night. As I drove down our old street at 20 miles an hour, I felt something strange. I felt like I was being watched. When I turned my head, curtains pulled shut, people ducked back behind their doors. Everything was just out of my sight, in the corner of my eye. It was even eerier here than it had been when I left, which I hadn't thought possible. Gianna met me in front of the apartment building, sitting on the steps and smoking a cigarette between pale, trembling fingers. By the pile of ash and butts beside her, I could tell it wasn't her first. Her red hair was down and frizzy, like she hadn't brushed it in a while, and her eyes looked small and puffy. When I parked and got out of the car, she slowly raised her head to look up at me. I couldn't read her expression as she stood, and it occurred to me that she might hit me, or strangle me, or both. Gianna, She cut me off, pulling me into the tightest hug of my life. I swore I could hear my own ribs crack. Her wool scarf scratched against my neck, and her hair stuck to my chapstick. "Thank you for coming back," she muttered into my ear. "Fuck you for leaving." I laughed dryly, patting her back awkwardly. "I deserve that." She finally pulled away, and I tried to gasp for breath as subtly as possible. Jesus, that girl was strong. She smiled at me weakly, readjusting her jacket. "Come on, come inside. I know she'll be happy to see you." I froze, my eyebrows cinching into a frown, my heart pounding in my chest. Wait, May's here. She wasn't taken. Gianna glanced back at me as she mounted the stairs, pressing her lips tightly together. No, she was. When we got upstairs, Gianna unlocked her door and looked around, her eyes flickering up and down the hallway. I wanted to ask, but I knew better than to do it there. She pushed the door open just enough for us to slip inside, and I followed her lead. I heard her lock the door again behind us as I stared, wide-eyed, at her apartment. It was a mess. There was almost nothing that wasn't broken: shards of pottery, flower stems, and glass coating the wooden floor. Anything that wasn't bolted down was strewn across the room. The walls were streaked with something that looked suspiciously like dried blood. In the corner of the room, Matteo was hunched in front of someone. His hair had grown out a bit, it was looking shaggy, and he seemed like he had lost a bit of weight. It's okay, it's just Gianna and Arden. You remember Arden, don't you?" I heard a choked whimpering sound, and then a gurgle. I stood there in front of the door, unable to move, unable to say or do anything. Matteo shifted, turning back to look at us, and I saw her. But she didn't see me. May sat in the corner, hugging her knees, which were riddled with bruises and scrapes. She was wearing a blue hospital gown, and she rocked back and forth in strange, jerky motions. "Help!" she whispered, her voice raspy and painful sounding. "Help! Help me!" Her black hair that was so silky and perfect before was wild now, missing patches, leaving bright red speckled spots of skin behind. Her face was swollen, almost in the way it had been the day I left, and smeared with fresh blood, and her eyes. She had no eyes. I choked out, forcing sound to leave my throat. I turned away and bent over, heaving and gagging over the pile of shattered ceramics. Gianna placed a hand on my back. "She went after Will," she whispered, her voice barely audible, her palm making small circles between my shoulder blades. "A few days after you went home, we heard him out there again. He was calling us by name. She just couldn't take it." I gagged again, but nothing would come out. Another gurgling moan came from the corner, growing into a whine. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her start to pull at her hair, and Matteo grabbed her wrists. Why is she here?" Gianna took a shaky breath. "I went a little crazy when she was taken. I slept in the lobby every night, just waiting for her to come back. When I finally heard her out there a week or so later, Matteo and I ran out there and grabbed her. That white van came, but we managed to get her inside before they caught us. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly painfully dry. Gianna glanced around the room, as if someone might be listening to us. They saw us, she mumbled, hugging herself. Obviously they saw us take her, and there are cameras everywhere. They know we have her. But no one has come for us. It's like they're waiting for something. May let out a sob, writhing in Mateo's grip. Help, please help, hurts. My lip trembled. I stood up straight, holding out my hand and creeping toward her. Hi, May. I bit my lip, fighting back tears. May trembled and rocked, her head tilted vaguely in my direction. Where her eyes had been there were only gory holes, like Shannon. They did the same thing to her that they did to Shannon. It had to be some kind of message. It's me, Arden. I'm here now, I came back. There's one more thing, Gianna said, and I felt her eyes watching me, cautious. The screaming, it stopped. They don't come anymore, the people begging for help, but every night. Right as she trailed off, the alarm rang out, more deafening than ever. Red lights flashed, flooding the apartment in crimson. I was gripped by that same paralyzing terror from my first night here, so sharp it rattled in my bones, so loud it rang in my skull like a funeral bell. May's head snapped around with an unnatural jerk, her whole frame quivering. The sound that left her throat wasn't human anymore, high, trembling, like a dog wailing against sirens. Mateo tried to silence her, pressing his palm over her mouth, but he recoiled with a guttural cry, blood streaming down his fingers as if her teeth had pierced straight through. May, stop, please. Gianna begged, her voice cracking. I reached for her too, but before I could take more than a step, she lunged. The impact knocked the air from my lungs as we crashed to the floor. Her nails slashed across my face, frantic, blind, desperate, scraping closer, closer to my eyes. She wasn't May anymore. She was some wild, feral thing. I screamed, clawing at her wrists, but her strength was manic, inhuman. It took both Gianna and Mateo to drag her off me, each of them clutching her arms as she writhed and snapped like a trapped animal. My face burned. When I touched it, my hand came back wet and red. May sagged, her body twitching, her breaths ragged. I crawled forward anyway, trembling, and wrapped her against me. She fought for a second, weak, spent, but then collapsed fully, sobbing into my ear. Her tears were hot, almost scalding. I stroked her tangled hair, avoiding the bald patches she had ripped out herself. It's okay, I whispered, my voice breaking. I shouldn't have left you. I'm sorry. I was a coward. Her shudders slowed, and I held her as the alarm finally died. The silence that followed so crushing it felt alive, pressing into my skull. My head throbbed with it. Later, when Mateo and Gianna left me with her, I laid May gently on the bed. Her breathing was shallow, her body still convulsing with tremors. By the dim light, I washed her blood-stained face with a wet rag, until, for a fleeting moment, I could almost recognize the girl she had been. Almost. I brushed her hair back and froze at the hollow spaces where her eyes should have been. I couldn't tell if it was really her lying there, or if she was just a husk wearing her voice. Still, I pressed my forehead to hers. She let me, drooling absently into her lap. I'm sorry, I told her again, softer this time, like a prayer to something that wasn't listening. I should have stayed. Her mouth opened and closed soundlessly, fish-like, like words were trapped somewhere inside her throat. My tears finally spilled, soaking her shoulder. When sleep came, I dreamed of Will outside the building, his face twisted in a silent scream as he stared straight up at me from the street below. When I jolted awake and ran to the window, the street was empty. Morning. The coffee in my hands trembled as much as my body. "I know what to do," I said finally, my voice steady only because I forced it to be. Mateo narrowed his eyes at me, glancing toward May. She was hunched on the floor, rhythmically slamming her head against the boards. Thunk, thunk, thunk. Each strike smeared a little more red. "After one night?" he asked. I took a sip of coffee, though it did nothing to steady me. "Do either of you have a better idea?" Their silence was answer enough. "I'll take her," I said. "When the alarm starts, I'll take her out there. And I'll let them take me too." May jerked harder, her head cracking against the floor with sickening force. "Help me," she whimpered between groans. "Help me." Gianna's face blanched. "No, Arden, you don't understand. They'll kill you. Or worse." "Maybe," I said, my voice low. "But maybe I'll find them. Maybe I can bring them back." Her lips trembled. Like May. The silence that followed was broken only by the wet thuds of May's head against the floorboards. Blood pooled beneath her. Mateo caught her in a chokehold, trying to restrain her as she shrieked for help, her voice shredding the air like glass. He looked up at me, his arms straining. "Then we're coming with you." Gianna nodded, her face pale but resolute. I wanted to argue, but the truth was, the thought of going alone made my stomach turn to ice. "Fine," I muttered. "Tonight." May howled in the background, the sound clawing at my nerves. "Tonight," Gianna echoed, forcing a smile she didn't believe in. "We'll bring them back." Mateo's lips curved upward too, grim and hopeless. "Yeah, we'll bring them back." But none of us really believed it. That's how we ended up in the street. The sirens shrieked so loud they seemed to drill into my skull, each note vibrating in my teeth. Red light from the street lamps pulsed across the asphalt, washing everything in a nauseating strobe. Gianna gripped my hand so tightly my knuckles cracked, while on my other side I clutched May's trembling fingers. Mateo was on her far side, holding her steady between us, as if any second she might lash out, or vanish. Faces peered from windows and doorways. Shapes of neighbors who whispered and shuffled, their mouths moving but their voices too soft to reach us. Watching. Waiting. I closed my eyes, wishing I could unsee them, unhear this, undo all of it. Then came the sound. Tires screeching around a corner, rubber clawing at pavement. A van skidded to a stop, coughing smoke and exhaust. Gianna's whisper cut the air. "Oh God," just as four figures climbed out. Men, though barely human in appearance. Their heads were sealed in featureless masks, smooth and blank as if they'd been erased. They wore white lab coats that looked more like burial shrouds. When they came toward us, May shrieked, thrashing with the strength of a cornered animal. They seized her first, dragging her off her feet. Gianna clung to me, nails digging into my skin until our fingers blanched white, fighting their pull. I wanted to fight too. I wanted to run. But my legs had already gone heavy with dread. Mateo didn't resist. His face was stone, his eyes dark, his jaw rigid. He let them wrestle him inside the van without a sound. When they tore Gianna from me at last, I felt the world tilt. My body slammed against cold metal, my chest pinning to what felt like a gurney. The van jolted forward. A man loomed over me, his blank mask inches from my face. He lifted a syringe, the needle impossibly long, gleaming under the red light. "Wait. Please wait." My voice cracked, hands raised in useless defense. The needle sank into my neck. Fire spread under my skin. The world fractured, black bleeding in at the edges until it swallowed everything whole. I opened my eyes to white. The silence was suffocating. The room around me was sterile and blank, its walls, ceiling, even the floor the same shade of chalky white. I was lying on a stiff bed, dressed in a paper-thin blue gown. For a moment I didn't remember. Then I did. The memory hit me so hard I almost vomited. No windows. Just a bed, a metal table, and a door that blended into the wall. In the corner, a black camera blinked like a single watchful eye. My legs wobbled as I pushed myself upright, feet touching the floor. I didn't expect the door to move when I turned the handle, but it did. Slowly, almost inviting. The hallway beyond was carpeted, buzzing with life. People wandered in every direction, all in the same hospital gowns, their conversations overlapping in a low murmur. A pair of children darted past me, laughing, their feet slapping against the floor. I stood frozen in the doorway, dizzy. "Arden!" The voice snapped me back. I turned and gasped. Gianna, Matteo, and with them, Will. His grin split his face as he stepped forward, wrapping me in a hug like nothing had ever happened. His arm rested comfortably around a strawberry blonde girl I didn't recognize. "Hey," he said, casual, almost cheerful. No blood, no wounds, no sign of the horrors I'd seen. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded, my voice brittle. He shrugged. "They kept me locked in a room, fed me, gave me books. Then suddenly, the doors were open." My stomach sank. Around us, faces flickered in my memory. Victims. People I swore I had seen dragged screaming into the night. Including the old man who had once stared straight through me before unleashing that scream I still dreamed about. And then, May. She appeared as if conjured, hands clasped behind her back, her smile shy, her eyes clear. She looked just as she had the first day I met her. Not torn, not blind, not broken. I gasped and pulled her into my arms, relief choking me. She laughed, kissed me, whispered she missed me. But as her forehead pressed against mine, a shiver ran down my spine. Because I remembered. Just 2 nights ago, I had done the same with another May, sightless, bloody, begging me for help. "This makes no sense," I whispered. Gianna nodded, her brow furrowed. "If you're all fine, then, who did we save?" Before anyone could answer, a voice boomed through hidden speakers. Distorted, inhuman. "Congratulations. The test is complete. The bystander experiment has ended. You are all free to leave once you sign your paperwork. Thank you." The intercom crackled off. For a moment, the hallway was silent. Then, like a spark, cheering erupted. Relief spread like wildfire, people laughing, clapping, hugging each other. I tried to join them. I even forced myself to smile. But unease gnawed at me. My friends chatted like nothing was wrong, already planning, already dreaming. Then I heard it. A scratch. Barely audible, but sharp enough to cut through the noise. I turned my head toward it. A single white door. Identical to the one I'd come through. But something clawed at the other side. Without thinking, I slipped away from the group. My hand shook as I turned the handle. The door creaked open. Darkness. The stench hit me first. Rot, waste, iron. My stomach lurched. Inside, a figure crouched in the corner, heaving breaths between sobs. "Help. Please, help." I stepped closer. My eyes adjusted, and I saw it. Not a person. Not even a single body. It was a mass. A writhing amalgamation of limbs and faces, skin stretched and torn, bones jutting through, mouths opening and closing in silent agony. 1,000 eyes blinked wetly at me, all pleading. I saw Shannon, the armless man, the squawking children. Will, May, help me, the chorus moaned, voices layered atop one another, reverberating through my skull. My knees buckled. I wanted to believe this was the monster, the thing that had tormented us each night, taking shapes, copying voices. I wanted to believe my friends were safe, untouched, and that this abomination was nothing but an experiment's cruel trick. But deep down, I couldn't. What if this was them? All of them. Every missing soul, pressed together into something unspeakable, forced to shift between stolen forms. A prison made of flesh. I don't want to believe May is in there. Still blind. Still begging. But I just don't know. What do you think? Story number 5. Emma was an extrovert, but she hadn't always been one. It was my fault, I think, that we drifted apart. I was 12, and I listened to that poisonous little voice, the one that hissed in my ear, "Why is your only friend a girl?" Emma wasn't a tomboy. She was a real girl. Hair clips shaped like stars and hearts, long blonde bangs, purple-painted walls plastered with posters of horses and boy bands. She liked unicorns and fairies. And I liked her anyway. She was funny, curious, generous. With me, she was alive in a way she never was around others. But I couldn't stand the looks. The boys jeering, the girls scoffing, the adults with their knowing smirks. Hope we get invited to the wedding. So I left her. Chose boys who spat and played soccer instead. And Emma stayed alone. Until high school. That's when she changed. She wasn't the quiet girl staring at her shoes anymore. Suddenly she was everywhere. In the halls with boys leaning close, on the lawn with laughing friends, surrounded like a queen bee. She was bright, loud, magnetic. Everyone liked Emma. How could you not like Emma? At graduation, I caught her staring into the distance, smiling that strange, sad smile. I thought for a second she was looking at me, but she wasn't. Then came college. Emma and I ended up at the same school, but I barely noticed her anymore. She was always surrounded by people, always smiling, and I had my own life to build. Until that night. The party. It wasn't the first wild night of the year, but it spun out of control anyway. Colored bulbs, smoke, cheap drinks in plastic cups. I was buzzing, laughing, happy, and then she arrived. I knew it by the sudden surge of noise, the way people rushed toward the living room. By the time I followed, she was on the table, on her hands and knees, a bottle clutched tight, vomit spilling. The room recoiled with disgusted laughter. Someone filmed. Someone shouted cruelly. And then I saw the dark stain spreading across her skirt. I moved before I could think, pushing through, scooping her up. She looked at me through glazed eyes. "Andrew," she slurred. And then she smiled, that same sad smile, before vomiting on my shirt. I locked us in the bathroom, sat her in the tub while the crowd outside pounded the door, chanting our names. She sobbed, muttered apologies. But then her fear sharpened into something else. "I ruined everything," she whispered. "Maybe I meant to. Maybe I can't do this anymore." "What do you mean, Emma?" Her eyes darted, glassy and terrified. "It follows me. It's in them. All of them. It watches. If I don't have friends, it gets angry." The chanting grew louder. The door shook. "I have to have friends," she cried. "I study them, Andrew. I write it all down. Everyone has to like me, or it'll kill me. It started with you." Her hand was ice when I took it. The door burst open. The police never believed me. How could they? How could one boy do what was done to her? A week later, I visited her house. Her mom remembered me and let me into her room. It was frozen in time. Purple walls, posters, unicorn figurines. I found the binder. Stickers peeling on the cover, pages full of names, photos, details no one should have known. She hadn't lied. She researched people. She documented them like specimens, trying desperately to survive. And then I found my page. It was almost empty. A photo ripped from the yearbook. My name underlined once, and then nothing. As if she hadn't even tried. As if I wasn't worth the effort. The picture stared back at me. My chest tightened, and then I heard it. Faint at first, like memory, but growing. The steady rhythm of fists on wood. Bang, bang, bang. I froze, binder in my lap, ears straining. A.N. Drew. A.N. Drew. A.N. Drew. I snapped the binder shut. The sound cut off instantly. The house was silent. Her mother was somewhere downstairs, humming faintly in the kitchen. I pressed my palms against my ears. Nothing. But when I opened the binder again, my picture staring right at me, the pounding returned. Closer this time. A.N. Drew. A.N. Drew. A.N. Drew.